George Shakal. Unknown to me who that is. Anyway, we're going to play a Queen's Gambit. And I think I'm going to go for one of the A6 lines. Basically, the idea of A6 is to force white to take on D5. Since after knight C3, DC4, I'm going to follow it up with B5, and it might be a little bit difficult to win the pawn back. White probably needs to go A4 now, as Mr. Shakal quite correctly does. But now I'm going to lose the C4 pawn, but I have won a tempo with B4 attacking the knight on C3, and it will be forced back, presumably to B1. Yeah, knight A2 is also okay, I believe. The idea with that being that you can later reroute the knight to B3 and possibly A5 if you're allowed, after you go on bishop D2 and then knight C1. Yeah, now bishop D2. I'm going to play A5. Obviously defending B4. A5 is a little bit double-edged, however. It fortifies the B4 point, but it weakens the B5 square, which is going to be relevant after I'm inevitably going to play C5 in order to challenge the pawn on D4. Queen C2, however, is not a good move. I should have started rerouting the knight, I think, immediately, since now I will get the opportunity to severely weaken his pawn structure. Now I also have a concrete threat, as a matter of fact, with Queen B8, which attacks both the pawn on H2 and threatens a fork with B3. So Queen C6 is a good move, preventing that threat. But I think I'm going to play Queen B8 anyway, winning a tempo by attacking H2, and then later on I'm preparing castle. And he has a pretty long think here, which I guess is justified, considering that his position isn't looking very rosy. But yeah, B3. B3 I don't think helps a whole lot. So I could take on H2 here, but there would be some complications after King G2, possibly Rook H1 after castles. Would love to go Bishop H2, King G2, and then Bishop F4, but unfortunately that's not possible because of Bishop F4 and then Queen takes A8. Also after castles, Bishop F4, Bishop takes H7, followed by Queen takes D7, or maybe even Queen takes D7, followed by Bishop H7, would be an issue. So I feel that it's not only more sort of instructive, but also may even be better just to castle. So now after Bishop G5, I think, yeah, now it's safe to take. Bishop F4 is going to be my move, regardless of whether it goes to H1 or G2. And notice how the knight on A2, now that he didn't bring it into the game immediately, then the knight on A2 may actually be out of play for a long time. Bishop E2, I don't think this helps his cause a whole lot. And at this point, it's pretty much a mopping up job. Yeah, queen c1. That's a free queen, and that does it. Okay. Not at all a bad game from my opponent. It's 1300. The thing I would mention again is the knight that was stuck on a2 till the end of the game. When you have, as they say, when you have a piece that's poorly placed, your whole position is bad. That is at least sometimes the case, and in this case, it certainly was part of his downfall. Okay, let's go for another 5-minute game against Yon606. Don't know who that is, obviously. So we're gonna go e5, e4, e5, and we're gonna go for the old Ruy Lopez. Trying to play relatively classical chess so far today, at the very least. And obviously here there are a lot of options for black, ranging from more aggressive with b5 or bishop c5 or knight e4 to more solid as he plays with bishop e7. Rook e1, b5. Yeah, these lines have been discussed for over 100 years at the very least, at the highest level. Now again, number of options for black here. My favorite for many years was knight b8, and then knight bd7, the Breyer system. Also bishop b7 and then rook e8. The Zaitsev system is very popular, as well as knight to a5, the Chigorin system. They all have different advantages and drawbacks. Yeah, this one I'm not that sure about. With rook e8, there is a line where you go knight d7, but I think you usually wait for knight bd2, because here I get to develop the knight to c3, and I think that should be an advantage for me. Usually in the Ruy Lopez, you develop the knight to d2. But that is mostly because you're not allowed to put the knight on c3 in one go. G6 is very reasonable. Preparing a possible bishop f8 and bishop g7, rerouting that bishop, and also closing the diagonal of my bishop on c2. I think I may just take the chance, though, to go bishop h6 in one go. And after bishop f8, I do feel as though the weakened dark squares may become a serious issue for him. So I'm gonna go queen d2, develop, and now if knight c4, there was queen h6. Also, I think after b4 there was knight d5, which should be favorable for me. Now I do have a bit of a decision to make, though. e5 is tempting because of the tactic d5, d5, bishop f3. I can take on f6 or queen d8 and then take on f6 with check, taking the bishop later on f3, winning a full piece. The question is, if he goes for something like knight h5, is that really favorable to me? I don't know, but it's kind of tempting, so we'll see. Probably d5 and then knight h5 is good, now that I think about it. Yeah. this was yeah, this was probably not quite correct. But at least he's set some concrete challenges. Wow, knight d5 is actually a very nice move. If, and this is a big if he sees the point. So knight d5 would look like it's just winning a piece because the knight on a5 is hanging. But he has this very nice intermediate move, knight c4, attacking my queen. After which he'll take back the knight later on, and additionally, he will get a very nice outpost for the bishop on d5, as well as improving the knight on a5, which was on the edge. So I'm not really sure if that is favorable for me at all. I do have other options like b3 maybe, restricting the knight on a5, or also bishop to e4. I think I'm gonna play b3 to probably keep as much tension as possible and try and induce a mistake here. For instance, now I think c5, which looks very logical, maybe a huge mistake because of knight e4. Then if d5, I think knight c5 is good. And if cd4, knight d6 is very good. And his position will probably collapse. So it turns out, since he did not respond to this threat, probably the move knight d5 on the last move was more lucky than good. Sorry to say. And now he will have bishop f3, somewhat ruining my king side, but it is nowhere near enough. And after knight e5, now I can meet queen g5 very comfortably with bishop e4, and there are just no chances for him. Bishop e6 is a decent move, but now bishop e4 is quite unpleasant. I'm going to win, I think, even more material, either one more pawn, as in this instance, with the c7 hanging, and now d4 is not hanging because of queen takes f7. Or there were also in other lines, the pawn on a6 was hanging, for instance, if he moves his rook. And now, again, I think we have the old mopping up job. Queen e7 looks decent. Now if rook e8, if he keeps chasing, I will go queen c5, offering a queen trade under, I think, quite favorable circumstances, as I would get a passed pawn. And after he moves his queen, I can just, yeah, queen d4 is probably even better. Knight c6 was also nice. After queen g4, there should be a decisive, sorry, queen c7, there should be a decisive discovered check, probably knight g4. It's reasonable. This, now, he may not be mated immediately because he has f6, but at the very least, he loses his queen. And now there's mate in 1. Okay, interesting game there. I think my opponent's play was reasonable there. It was just one tactic that was missed, which lost him the knight, and after that it was obviously over. Okay, let's go for a 3-minute game. This is FM Dr. Pipo from France, and I do get another white here. And the 3-minute game means that I will be able to talk a little bit less, I think. So I'm going for the main line of the Petrov here. Let's see what he has in store. I'm sure he he's well versed in theory here. Rook e8. Yeah, it's a very reasonable move. Usually here you go for a quick attack of some sort. So I think this is very reasonable. I could go knight e5, but I want to try and attack. Now knight d3 is logical, but I would go queen d3. And yeah, again, I just want to attack. So I'm giving up this piece and hoping for some serious attacking chances. Also, I could have gone bishop h7 immediately here. I think would also have been interesting. Knight g4 seems like the most logical move here. Probably go rook d to e1 then to keep the tension. Yeah, f5. Guess this is also reasonable, but I'm just gonna try and blow everything open. Takes the knight. I open the h file, of course, and queen a5. Bishop d4 looks very good. Now queen h3 followed by queen h7 is a threat. Also just opening the third rank for the queen, I think, is in general very useful for me. I think also rook h8, king h8, queen h3, king g8, g6, maybe a decisive threat. Basic conclusion is he's in a lot of trouble here. c5 would lose to queen c4 and mate to follow shortly there because he cannot block on the diagonal. Queen a2. If g6, there is fg4 and there's no longer queen h7. So I need to think here a little bit. Queen in a2 also helps with the defense because later on the queen can come to g8. Let's say after rook h8, queen h3, and then g6. Maybe there is some defense there based on, but then again, I don't see it concretely, so I think I'm just gonna go for rook h8. In that line, king f8 would still be mate after queen h8, queen h8, and then bishop g7. So some sort of defense would have to be based on bishop f6, I think, and then bishop f6, king f8. But it looks hard to believe. Actually, I think I had a very nice line there. Just to pause a second, bishop f6, bishop takes f6, king f8. Yeah, there's bishop g7, there's king e7 maybe. So maybe that wasn't. But now we do probably get the chance to deliver a nice mate. Again, queen h8. Queen h7 is a massive threat. And king f8, now there is bishop takes g7, king takes g7, since there's no king e7. And then queen h7, king f6, g5, king e6, queen f7 would have been mate. Rook e2 is a nice attempt at counterplay because it threatens queen a1 mate. But unfortunately for him, I get to deliver another checkmate, and now there's back rank checkmate instead. Okay, I think that was pretty cool. Regardless of the like objective evaluation of that, that was a good one. Okay, let's go back to to a 5-minute game. Apparently now I'm playing according to my opponent's avatar. I'm playing Albert Einstein, which is obviously an interesting sort of challenge for me. Just 1 sec. I need to start eating before I play rather than during. Okay, anyway, we have a Sicilian here. If I do play g6, all my pawns would be on light squares. But the idea is to, while you're waiting a little bit with development, you are staying flexible. The knight from b8 can go to c6 or d7, and also the knight from g8 can go to either f6 or e7. And a3 is decent, but it's obviously a little bit slow. And yeah, queen c7 is very typical in order to play knight f6 without allowing e5. Okay, so this is interesting. Bishop f4. First of all, e5 does not win a piece because of bishop g3, keeping the pin on the queen. Secondly, after d6, well, sacrifices with bishop b5 followed by knight b5 is already somewhat looming. After long castles, for instance, I probably would have gone e5 then. And if bishop b5, a b5, knight b5, I go bishop queen c6, bishop g5, knight d7. Looks a bit dangerous, but maybe I would have been fine there. Bishop g5 violates one of the main rules of opening play, that you should not move the same piece twice. And also it sort of helps me develop, since I wanted to go knight d7 anyway. Also, I could have gone bishop e7, which would also have helped me with development. And now I think he's a little bit stuck. Yes, his position is nice. Pieces are well developed, but the question is, where are you actually going to attack? And meanwhile, I will castle next, and I will hopefully have a very solid position with maximum flexibility. And taking an f6 is not positionally desirable. Usually you should not exchange bishops for knights without some concrete justification. But then again, I'm sure a lot of you already know that. Again, in the theme of staying flexible, as you do in many of these positions, I'm placing the rook opposite his queen, which can be very useful in case the position is opened. And e5, I guess, is reasonable. But I think concretely, it does lose a pawn, since obviously ba3, the knight on c3 is hanging. And most probably I will be a pawn up with a better position as well. And knight f3, yeah, I don't know what that move is all about. Now I get to take on b2 as well, attacking both c1 and c3 and the rook on e5 via x-ray. And he's gonna be lucky if he loses just an exchange. Probably, yeah. It's gonna be a full piece. If he'd moved the knight to, let's say, e2, I would have taken an f3 first, and yeah, knight g5. Now he's losing the plot. This very often happens to lower rated players, that you make a bunch of reasonable moves, and once you make one mistake or even a blunder, then they very often compound, and you make a whole bunch of them, and your position collapses. Okay. Yeah, once again, I'm accepting 3-minute and 5-minute challenges from premium members. So if you do not meet those criteria, you're not gonna be able to play, unfortunately. Okay, so this is Art with some numbers from Belgium. Okay, let's just try and play pretty classical once again. b6, this is a somewhat unusual move order, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to get one of the good old lines of the Queen's Indian that Gary popularized back in the day. And yeah, this is the classical way of playing it as black. Now you usually go c5. Wondering briefly if I don't think that's the way people play, but if e5, probably e5, h6 is nothing special. Anyway, I think I'm just gonna castle. And the white position looks quite appealing here with a pretty big center, but usually in practice it's not that easy. And black, it's fairly easy development and some possibilities of attacking the white center. Queen c7, can't say I like that move at all, actually, since you're sort of begging for d5 to be played. It looks fairly similar to an old game of Gary's versus Portish, where he played d5, everything was blasted open after ed5, eventually going for bishop g7 later on, and winning a beautiful game. I think it's just too tempting here to go d5, so I sort of have to do it. If CD, if ED, it's already looking pretty dicey for black, I would say. Knight a5, and then yeah, after queen e4, I probably have to play g6. This looks, to me at least, very dubious. So knight a5, he quite correctly does. That's a lot better. Not opening up the diagonal for my bishop on d3, but he does leave himself with a pretty glaring weakness on e6. So I think I should be doing very well. Here you see another one of the disadvantages of queen c7, which is that he has to spend another move defending it with queen d7. And even on d7, I would say the queen is not particularly safe, since bishop b5 is a massive threat now. And if knight c6, there would have been bishop takes e6 followed by bishop c4, winning the queen. So now I think I'm still gonna go bishop b5, and if queen to Yeah, queen f7 is probably decent. I was hoping for queen e7 and then maybe I could have gone knight f5 there, ef5, and then rook d7. So there was queen g5 there, but at the very least, it looked tempting. I can see now that I'm very short on time. A natural result of me yapping too much. So I'm going to have to speed up here. Still, rook d7 is a massive threat. Rook f7, I'm just going to go rook d1. Maybe bishop e5 was an option there as well. Maybe I missed out there. Okay, can't think. Okay, I'll just take on f7. Maybe you can take on e4 now. As is getting out of hand in a major way. We'll give a check, hope for the best. Okay, we'll take d3, knight e5 next. This has gotten ugly. But he's taking a lot of time. g3. Now at least my position is improving quite a bit. Okay, we'll just have to hope for a quick attack here. But also he's quickly running out of time as well. Tending bishop a3 at some point. Give a check. He's defending well, but I think he's going to lose on time. Okay, yeah, he just wasn't very fast. But in general, there, I think it was a good game for a while, but then obviously turned out into a bit of a ridiculous scramble. Okay, let's accept challenge from a Finnish player, Jukka from Lahti, 1800. We got ourselves a Ruy Lopez here again, and this time I'm on the black side. Yeah, d3. So the line I played quite a bit myself. Gives some extra options, also takes away some options, as these opening lines often do. And it turns into a sort of quiet game here in the style of the Giuco piano. Yeah, bishop g5 is interesting, but only if he follows knight g6 with knight h4 here. Otherwise, I'd just get h6 with tempo next, which is gonna render bishop g5 pretty pointless, seeing as h6 is a move that I probably would have wanted to play anyway. Okay, so we have an interesting point here. If I go bishop e5, he can't. Bishop d7. He can take on e5, which is gonna render the position a little bit dry, and also let him take on b6, slightly weakening my pawn structure. So I'm thinking maybe ed4 instead. Now if cd4, obviously I cannot take on e4 because of bishop d5, forking the rook on a8 and the knight on e4. But I can go bishop b7, and then he probably would have had to play d5 in order to save the pawn. Now after bishop d4, I go c5. After he takes on f6, which I think he probably will, he has weakened the square on he has weakened the square on I have weakened the square on d5, and might have a strong light square bishop, but I think um, the dark square bishop might be strong after I go c4, and also I have knight f4 later on, which might be a strong opportunity. I don't know. I think here after bishop e5, which is obviously a mouse slip, I don't know. I don't think I should win that way. So let's just give him a second chance. Yeah, now after all, I get c4, and I do get the knight f4 stuff that I was hoping for. So I think this is still pretty good for me. Knight g3 seems like the best move here in order to mate queen g6 with queen g6 with knight to d3. It is interesting to go queen g6 or queen g5. I do think, however, that bishop h3 here is a little bit much. Gh, knight h3, king g2. Then who knows? So let's go queen g5. And after knight to f3, I will go h5, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, now if knight f3, which would be a very logical move, attacking the queen, I can go queen takes g3, exploiting the pin. And after a move like king h1, then h4, knight f3 may not be that great for me, but I can take on d4 first there, and think that would work pretty well. Queen f3 is an excellent move, preparing h4 and knight to f5. And I do have the feeling that I should take on h3 now. Whether I should take with the bishop or the knight, I don't know. Let's take with the bishop. I just have some kind of intuitive feeling that did I just blunder? Does he have h4 now? I would have gotten a number of pawns for the piece, but I think I may have blundered there. I had a nice trick there. If you'd gone queen g4, I could have gone gh. Well, still there was fg, so well, it doesn't matter. But the point is, if queen g5, there was knight h3 and then queen g5, winning the pawn, regaining the queen. Truth be told, I didn't get much at all from this whole operation, other than I lost a lot of time, and my position probably got a little bit worse. So there you go. I'm still fine though. Knight d5, I do get either knight g5 with tempo, or I think probably better knight c5. Then obviously if e6, I got fe6, attacking the queen. So we can't do that. Otherwise, I will get to trade off one of his his two central pawns. He is playing really well now though. Getting a little bit worried. Rook h4 was a major threat, so I feel like I had to do something about that. Yeah, queen g7. Still should be reasonably safe here. Okay, queen e3. I do think I can take on e5 now. I'd be happy to trade everything because my pawn structure is better. I do also think that my knight is better than his bishop, which is sort of biting on granite right now on g6, and also the pawns that I have on c4, b5, a6, restricting that guy in a major way. Also, the rook on h4 is horribly misplaced now for the end game. I actually think after rook e8, he may actually lose the game on the spot. I mean, the only sort of save I can see is maybe b4. But I do think knight d3 may win. Maybe there's d6 then. Yeah, he should have fought on. There were some interesting lines there, but I do think